Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Well, 1 year since the Lower Mainland's Snowmageddon 2022 and the traffic chaos that ensued. I know the memories, right? Well, have drivers and planners learned anything to prepare for a snowstorm? After 12:30, baking news on the holiday treat front. A strike at the Rogers Sugar Refinery has made sugar harder to come by. We'll get some tips for sugar-free baking and ask for your favorite recipes. Plus, the Vancouver International Black Film Festival starts this weekend. We'll talk to the founder. I'm Michelle Eliot. Welcome to BC Today. Thank you for joining us on CBC Radio 1 and live streaming on CBC Gem, cbc.ca/BC, and on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. Well, 1 year ago, a winter snowstorm hit BC's south coast.
Okay.
Watch out!
It's on there. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Oh, that was a moment when a bus slid down a hill and essentially crashed into a car that was parked on the side of the road, and then it hit the next car over and the next car over. That you might remember that from last year. It was one of the pileups as commuters were stranded across the region. One resident told the CBC their usual 30-minute commute took more than 12 hours. The Alex Fraser Bridge was shut completely for several hours because of crashes. The highway maintenance contractor told CBC its workers were stuck in the same mess as the public, and that prevented them from getting to the highways. And they faced further obstacles as drivers, as you remember, abandoned their cars. Well, Metro Vancouver is sometimes the center of jokes from other parts of the country about how the region handles these situations each year. But some are calling for more serious attention to this recurring problem and saying things could have been a lot worse and that we need better preparation. Daniel Fontaine is a city councillor for New Westminster, and he, along with Surrey councillor Linda Annis, are renewing their calls for a snow summit to make sure that grinding halt to traffic doesn't happen again. I want to hear your thoughts as well. What do you think needs to improve when it comes to how we deal with snow and traffic? Are you yourself better prepared? What goes through your mind when you hear about all the snow-related commuting problems, the chaos in the Lower Mainland? Give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. By email, you can send your thoughts as well, bctoday@cbc.ca. Daniel Fontaine joins me now. Good afternoon, Councillor. Thanks for being with us.
Good afternoon.
Well, I don't know what you remember from last year, but I certainly remember trying to pick up my kid at school that is generally about a 2-3 minute drive away, and it took more than an hour, and I don't think we even made it there in the end. And we heard from people here on the open line. One man hitchhiked over the course of 5 hours from car to car to get home. What do you recall of 1 year ago?
Well, what I recall is it was a night of over, I would call it several 100,000 stories of people who were severely impacted, like yourself and others. And as you said, some people who would normally take a 30-minute commute was taking 12 hours. And what we saw a year ago today was literally every bridge, with the exception of the Pattullo Bridge, were effectively shut down.
Yeah.
We had complete and utter gridlock on our streets. And we had a situation which we were very fortunate that didn't result in anything more catastrophic, in that as the highways and maintenance crews were stuck in traffic, so too were fire trucks and ambulances and other first responders. So we certainly had one heck of a night that night, and it's hard to believe it's been a year ago today.
Yeah, and that led you to call for something you called a snow summit. What was it, and what's happened since?
Yeah, so the Snow Summit, Councillor Annis and I from Surrey both asked for the Snow Summit. We were asking for Metro Vancouver to play a leadership role within our region to actually do two things. Firstly, let's find out what happened that night. Let's get the information from the experts, from the engineers, from the folks who apply road salt, et cetera, from the bus drivers, everybody who has some level of expertise, and from the public in terms of how they were impacted. Let's learn what happened that night. then let's apply that moving forward to some recommendations on how to make sure that it never, ever happens again. And it's important to remember, although it's been a year ago, it wasn't actually the biggest snowfall we've ever had in the Lower Mainland. It just, there was a confluence of events. It was around the timing, I believe, around dinner time and rush hour, a little bit of snow. And when you combine that with bridges and ice, and it was really bad. So the Snow Summit was all about finding out what happened, what should have happened, and for those reports and that information to all be made available to the public. Unfortunately, it got voted down, my motion in New Westminster, and the request to Metro Vancouver never did get followed through. So at this stage, I don't believe, any further ahead in terms of finding out what actually happened that night.
What was the reason for it to be voted down?
I'm not sure. The rationale that was provided was that there was a number of things that were said, but basically that Metro Vancouver should not be playing a role on things like snow removal and snow clearing, and that it has a very defined role of sewers and waters and regional parks. But that this particular issue of snow removal and snow clearance on the roads, Metro Vancouver just didn't feel like it had a role to play, and I couldn't fundamentally disagree more. And I'm sure there are several 100,000 people who were impacted a year ago who would agree with me that Metro Vancouver should be playing a role in that. Unfortunately, we're at a bit of a loggerheads.
But that gets to, one of the issues last year, right, was the issue of jurisdiction. So you have city governments, Metro Vancouver, and the highway as well, which is provincial.
Yes.
And so how do you get over that, I guess, that issue of trying to coordinate among different jurisdictions?
100%. And that was one of the reasons why I thought the Snow Summit was important, because provincial officials were going to be invited to attend that Snow Summit. Because if you recall, the highways that the province had control over were in vastly different condition than the municipalities. And then you had the municipalities having vastly different conditions, depending on what side of what boundary you were on. You might be driving on bare pavement, hit Coquitlam, and then suddenly you're needing your 4x4 to drive on low heat highway. It made no sense. There was really no coordination around it. And like I said, I'm most concerned for our first responders, or people who might be having a medical emergency or a fire or other issues, that we dodged a bullet that night, because thankfully, not that I'm aware of, nobody was impacted, but it would only take another storm for us to be back into the same position, and we'll be no further ahead. And unfortunately, we don't have the information as to what led up to that night.
I'd like to put out the phone numbers again. 1 year after what was called Snowmageddon 2022 in Metro Vancouver, causing gridlock throughout the region, as you heard, bridges effectively closed, cars ending up parked and abandoned along streets, and commutes that would normally take shorter took hours and hours. And so we're asking you, what are your own memories of that year, your own story of being stuck in traffic and trying to get home? What do you remember? And do you think we've learned our lesson? Have drivers learned anything? Have city officials, bus drivers, transit services, even truckers, have we learned about how to better prepare for a snowstorm? What do you want to see done? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 as well. My guest is New Westminster City Councillor Daniel Fontaine. And I'm looking out, today, obviously, we don't have any snow in Metro Vancouver, really foggy, which does affect traffic as well. I know this morning it was quite soupy as I was coming in. How much of this falls on drivers?
Well, I heard a lot of that a year ago, that it resulted, the events that occurred that night primarily were as a result of people not having the proper tires and the proper, not having the training or the knowledge to drive in snowy conditions. To a certain degree, I would agree with that to a certain degree, but the chaos and the sheer vast volume of gridlock that we had cannot be just explained away by a few folks who don't have winter tires. there was something well beyond the normal kind of lower mainland unpreparedness for a bit of a snowfall. We had something very unique, and I can't put my finger on it, but I know that I would love to be able to hear from the experts, because I'm sure they would be able to quantify and be able to explain to the public why a little bit of snow at a rush hour completely shut down all of our bridges, with the exception of one of them. There's something must have happened. And with climate change, we know this is going to happen again. We know it will likely be more frequent than 1 in 50 years. Could be 1 in 5 years or 1 in 3 years. And, I just want to emphasize as well, around the Snow Summit, one of the things we were looking for was recommendations. And I heard some great suggestions from the public. And one of them was even to be able to use the emergency alert system on our phones and be able to communicate to people who are trapped in their cars, trapped on highways, maybe don't have enough gas. We did not use the emergency communication system in a way that we should have last time. And I put out the question, are we any more prepared to use that emergency communication system this winter if we come into a situation where we're back with a snowfall and people are caught on the roads? I don't think so.
You talk about what we could have learned from a snow summit, or what we could learn from a snow summit should be called for now. To you, what could be improved, say in your own community?
Yeah, so I think that there are things that can be done within our own community. Obviously, snow clearance and making sure that roads are properly salted, that there's enough advanced education and information to drivers in advance. But, this is not a snowfall that hit just New Westminster. It was a region-wide event, and snow doesn't stop at one border and doesn't snow in Delta and stop snowing in New Westminster. This hit the entire region. We knew for several days ahead of it that the snow was coming. We knew that there would be a good chance that traffic would be impacted. And when we look at what we did and did not do in terms of preparing the public for this, I think there are a lot of lessons to be learned. And it's not about a blame game. It's not about pointing fingers at one jurisdiction or another. It's all about learning from this. And we should always be learning in terms of how to do things better. But given the impacts of climate change and knowing what we know, that these are not going to be one-off events anymore, it's incumbent upon our civic leadership at the metro region and in cities and at the province, quite frankly, because they have a number of roads that they control here as well.
Right.
It's incumbent upon us to get it right and to learn and not repeat the mistakes we did last year.
Let's take some calls. We are asking you, it is 1 year after that snowfall that hit the Metro Vancouver region, caused traffic chaos and gridlock. What have we learned, and what do you think we need to do better? Do you think we do need a snow summit to learn those lessons and better prepare for the next time it happens? Our number is 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone as well. My guest is New Westminster City Councillor Daniel Fontaine. And let's go to our callers now on the line. And we have a caller joining us from Abbotsford, and Scott is on the line. Hi, Scott.
Hi, how are you doing today?
I am well. Thanks so much for calling. And what goes through your mind? You're joining us from the Valley.
I'm calling from Abbotsford. We're currently doing some work out here, but
Okay.
I'm from the interior, and it is the law in British Columbia that everyone has winter tires on during the winter. Technically, your insurance is void with ICBC if you get in an accident and you don't have winter tires. That means no all-season tires. They're not all-season. They're only 3 seasons. And number 2 is it's been a choice of people of the Lower Mainland not to fund proper snow removal equipment in the Lower Mainland.
Right. And there so yes, let's go through what the rules are. Those winter tires, I've just been pulling them up here, and let's see if I can pull them up once again. Winter tires or chains are required on most routes in BC from October 1st to April 30th. There are conditions, though, where MNS, those mud and snow tires, are allowed, right, that meet the requirements?
Yeah, mud and snow meet the requirements, but all-season tires, which are very common in the Lower Mainland, are not, and they don't work.
So is that what goes through your mind, that when you hear about these kinds of stories, like, oh my goodness, just get those winter tires?
Well, it goes through my mind that you kind of got what you asked for. You didn't want to fund proper snow removal equipment, and you didn't put the proper tires on your own car. So you kind of got what you asked for.
Oh, okay. Any sympathy at all for Lower Mainland drivers, Scott?
Not even a little bit, because we run through the same problems all winter long in the interior, and cars are properly equipped and the municipalities are properly funded.
Right, but we don't have the same weather, for example. So I'm just putting to you what the cities will say, which is, does it justify the same amount of spending when it can be once a season and that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, they used to get a lot more snow than they do now.
Yeah. Okay, Scott. It's a sentiment we hear a lot, and I appreciate that you've put it forward today. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And from ICBC, it does say both all-season mud and snow tires and mountain and snowflake tires meet requirements for winter tire designation in BC. All-season mud and snow tires are a safe option if you only encounter winter conditions on a limited basis and are prepared to drive with added care and caution if winter conditions are encountered. That is, though, a very common sentiment. We heard it in the days following the snowstorm and the chaos and traffic in Metro Vancouver. A lot of people saying you need to take ownership of that preparation as well. And this is what happens when you don't. Daniel Fontaine, how do you respond to that?
Well, what Scott said, as you indicated, was very common and continues to be a common refrain from a number of people, especially those who don't live in the Lower Mainland, that we just simply were to put winter tires on and that would resolve the problem. Winter tires will not resolve the problem of the snow bombs that come off of the Alex Fraser Bridge and the new Port Mann Bridge and likely the new Patillo Bridge, which is being constructed. It doesn't address the fact that if roads and particularly bridges that go over warm bodies of water like the Fraser River are icy or frozen, it doesn't matter what type of winter tires you have, you're going to have sheer ice on there unless it's properly salted and sanded. There are a lot. I agree that it is a challenge in a community in the Lower Mainland that, is in denial that we're not living in Southern California. This is Southern British Columbia. It does snow regularly. It does get cold. But we also have to be, pragmatic and practical. And that's what a lot of municipal governments are trying to do, is balance budget needs. And that's why you likely do see that snow removal budgets aren't as big as they should be.
Right.
But he makes a good point, for sure, that there were a lot of people who didn't have the proper tires and went out on the road. But I would argue, was there enough communication? Was there enough information given from government and from the Ministry of Transportation telling people if they didn't have those winter tires to absolutely stay off the road and not cause any further congestion?
Okay. Thank you again, Scott, for that call. Justin is calling us from Nanaimo. Hi, Justin.
Hey, how are you?
I am doing well. Staying put.
Well, yeah, I'd like to weigh into this conversation as well. I've driven all across Canada in the wintertime. I've been part of snow removal teams.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't matter what kind of tires you have here in southern British Columbia. The wet snow just impacts no matter what kind of tread you have. It just cakes in there and you become a toboggan down the hill.
Right.
That's another thing in southern British Columbia is the hills we have.
Yes.
Right? Everything is hills. And when the snow removal teams, they brine the roads and then it rains, well, that brine washes away. So now you have the rain and the moisture on the roads and it freezes and then it snows. Now you have that ice under the snow. And lots of other municipalities don't have the amount of rainfall that we get, especially where it turns right from rain into snow within minutes and then covers that ice. Do you know what I'm saying? And so
it's a perfect storm.
It is. It really, truly is, right? And so what we deal with here is not comparable to anywhere.
Uh-huh.
Right? So you can, because we have that moisture coming off of our ocean as well.
Right. I did hear that a lot last year as well. Justin, I'm so curious. You have worked with snow removal, on snow removal. Tell me a little bit about what that is like when you're faced with that kind of situation we had last year.
Well, the snow removal part is nothing. It's a matter of that brine sticking underneath. And when they brine the roads and then it rains, that all washes away. So there is nothing to create that heat under the snow, per se, to allow when the plows go to take it right down to the pavement again.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So then the rain just builds up and it flash freezes. because it's right at that temperature, and then the snow gets on top of it, and now it's a wet snow, so now your tires are filled, there's no tread left, so you're basically a toboggan. I'm talking about like what happened last year and lots of other times, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
sure, there's times where the snow is colder, and it does not get impacted into your treads as much, right? So you're a little bit better. So we have a huge variable of the different types of snow that we have here in southern British Columbia.
Okay.
Right? Whereas in Alberta, northern Alberta, it's so cold, you can do 100 miles an hour in the snow, and the snow just drifts away.
And I need to move on to other callers, but I really want to ask you, what should we do about that variable? What can be done about that?
There's really nothing you can do except for close down all the hills or, studded tires, and I don't know what the solution is, but I'm telling you what the problem is, right?
Yeah.
So,
no, appreciate it. Appreciate hearing from you, Justin. Thanks so much.
Take care. Bye.
Take care. Graham is next now in Victoria. Hi, Graham. Well, what do you want to say about preparing for the next snowstorm?
Well, having grown up on the coast, North Coast, there's essentially the only thing that I can see is people to park their cars safely on the side of the road and wait. Those in the interior and east of the Rockies drive on squeaky snow. The snow we have right on the coast.
Right.
When you touch it, no matter what's underneath or anything else, I agree with the previous caller. But when you touch it, it becomes ice.
Yeah.
You can see that on your sidewalk. I try to get the snow before I step on it. Otherwise, I'm scraping ice footsteps off.
That's absolutely true. You need to get to the snow before it starts to freeze like that. So the same thing that I asked our previous caller, what can we do about that then, that variation?
Well, that's where we don't have enough tax money at the municipal or provincial or even federal levels to put in capital for snow removal and everything else to cover single point events. Oh, and as has been related, you actually have to have your staff in that equipment before the event happens. Yeah. Well, that's, huge amount of overtime.
Yeah, and we all know about how hard it is to staff things right now.
It doesn't matter what type of tires the vehicle has, you're on ice.
Yeah. Graham, thank you very much. Thanks for the call.
4x4 going, you need studs to stop.
Thanks so much for the call in Victoria. I'm going to wrap up with Daniel Fontaine. What are you expecting? Do you expect a reaction from your call now, your renewed call for a snow summit?
Well, I'm not giving up. Neither is Councillor Annis. That's why we're speaking out today. We think it's very important on the anniversary of this event to speak out. And I love what I've been hearing just in the last half an hour on this call, some great ideas and suggestions and concepts. But that's what the Snow Summit is all about, bringing together the public, the experts, and for us to talk about this. And I think it's critically as important today as it was a year ago for us to be calling for the Snow Summit. So Councillor Annis and I will continue to advocate for that, and we'll continue to request that Metro Vancouver take the time to bring the experts in and to report out to the public, because we've heard, I'll give you one suggestion in terms of recommendation we didn't talk about. One of the things I heard from the public, which I thought was very good, is to keep 3 lanes of the bridges open and close some of the lanes, and then clear the other lanes and then close them, and to try to find a way of keeping some of those bridges open in those single events where it is so critical. But those are the kind of ideas that we'll get from the public and from the experts if we are open to actually listening to what went wrong and trying to figure out how to prevent it from happening again.
It's good to speak with you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me on.
Daniel Fontaine is a city councillor for New Westminster. And now I'll tell you a bit more about what's happening Friday here at CBC British Columbia. It is going to be our 37th annual Food Bank Day. And here at CBC BC, over the years, you, our generous audience, have donated more than $18 million to food banks in this province. And I'll share details in a few minutes of how you can make a donation if you're able. You'd be helping people like this.
Hi, my name is Brenda, and I'm 57 years old, and I come to the food bank because I have a family that needs help, and I also need help for food. Living in poverty is very hard for me, and so we come to the food bank to get food and meet a lot of people here too. I'm also on PWD, which is on Ministry of Social Services. We don't make enough money on welfare, and so we come to the food bank to top everything off that we need and just to help us out through the month. And we come here once a week. Usually I come on Mondays, but today Monday I was sick, so today I came and I got the food I love, and everything is great. Well, I just moved from Maple Ridge to Richmond, and I was living in poverty there, but we didn't go to the food bank. I just lived check to check, and now I'm not in the same circumstances. We do have money that I pay for rent, and it's expensive, rent is, so we have just enough to get us by for the month, and we top it off, like I said, with the food bank. When we get in, we get numbers, like today I was number 10, so I was the last one to get in, and so we go through a line, and we start from the beginning here. We walk in, and there's a station that we have to put our names in to get our card and stuff. Like I get a C, which is a family of 5, and I go through and pick up my own food and whatever I want. And so most of the time I pick out things that we all need at home, just not for one person. We pick everything out for everybody at home. Today we did really well. I got ribs, I got taco stuff. We get everything here. If you are thinking about giving money to this food bank, to any food bank, give graciously because we do need it. And I thank you for everything that you guys do for us.
Thank you to Brenda for sharing your personal story. And yes, our 37th annual CBC British Columbia Food Bank Day is coming up this Friday, December the 1st. And you can actually make a donation to the food bank of your choice in BC now. Just go to cbc.ca/foodbankday and click on the Donate Now banner. You'll see a drop-down menu, and you can scroll through and choose the food bank you would like to donate to. And within 24 hours, you will receive a tax receipt by email. Again, that's cbc.ca/foodbankday. And we do have a special edition of BC Today planned from noon to 3 p.m. on Friday. I'll be co-hosting with the host of North by Northwest, Margaret Gallagher. We'll have some fun on the stage. We'll have our very own house band as well, Jack Garton and the Holiday Spirits, to get you into the holiday season giving mood. You can listen on CBC Radio and watch the live stream on CBC Gem or cbc.ca/BC. This is BC Today here on CBC, and we are on radio and live streaming as well. I'm Michelle Eliot. Thanks so much for joining us. And coming up in our next half hour, we're going to hear about the Vancouver International Black Film Festival, which showcases stories and films by Black filmmakers in Canada and around the globe. We'll speak with the festival's founder. That's coming up after the CBC News Update with Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. A newly unsealed U.S. criminal indictment has unleashed an unprecedented flood of details about an alleged plot connected to the Indian government to carry out assassinations in Canada and the U.S. The indictment contains allegations that the accused, Indian national Nikhil Gupta, was planning to kill 3 Sikh separatists on Canadian soil. Gupta is accused of trying to arrange one killing in New York after receiving instructions from an Indian government employee. A man from North Vancouver has been killed in combat in Ukraine. Brad Stratford was serving with the International Legion for the Defense of Ukraine. The Legion wouldn't share details around his death, but says Stratford was loved and respected by his brothers in arms and considered an exceptional soldier and a great friend. And a Vancouver-based company that received hundreds of millions of dollars in funds from the federal and provincial governments 6 months ago says it's laying off 10% of its workforce. Abcelera helped develop the first antibody therapy treatment for COVID-19 and says the layoffs will help focus its efforts on more of that work. And now the forecast on the north coast. Periods of rain this afternoon with a high of 6. Highs to -2 with sunshine in the Peace. In the central interior, cloudy with a high of 1. Highs from -4 to +1 with a mix of sun and cloud in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, mainly cloudy with a high of 2. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, mainly sunny this afternoon with highs around 6 degrees. I'll have more local news at the top of the hour. Now back to Michelle with BC Today.
Thanks so much, Rob. That's Robert Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Welcome back. You're with BC Today here on CBC Radio 1 and live streaming as well. I'm Michelle Eliot. Very nice to be with you. Well, a 2-month-long strike at the Rogers Sugar Refinery is making things a little sour for holiday bakers. Bakers and candy makers are struggling to keep up with demand and lack of sugar. Places like Lee's Donuts and Old World Fudge Company in Vancouver are dealing with limited supply. Well, there are some who have been baking without sugar for years now, and we're going to get some tips in a moment. Love to hear from you as well. What is your own favorite sugar-free baking recipe? And what are your tips for replacing sugar? You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, and star or pound 690 on your cell phone as well. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca. And Megan Brooke is the owner of the Sugar Free Shop up in Prince Rupert. Hello, Megan.
Hi, how are you?
I am well. Thanks so much for joining us. You're in your shop, is that right?
Yes, I am.
I can see you're in. Is this your office? It looks like a bit of a storage room.
It's a little corner in our kitchen.
Yeah.
We're just at our lunch rush right now, so I'm just snuck off in the corner to talk to you guys.
Found the quietest place. I'm sure it's busy outside. Yeah. It's lunchtime. But I can see on the shelf behind you there some packages, red packages of something that says sweetener.
Yeah, that is Lakanto monk fruit erythritol blend. It's an all-natural plant-based sweetener. Tastes just like sugar. You can bake with it, do everything you would with sugar.
Okay, I'll ask you more about that in a moment. How did you get interested in baking without sugar in the first place?
After I had my first son, I started the keto diet to get rid of the baby weight. And I did that for a few years, but that's all sugar-free. And I just continued not to eat sugar because I realized it made me feel not good. So, yeah, and I got into the baking because, you know, if you want that kind of stuff, you have to make it yourself. Nowhere, you can't buy it at the grocery store.
Right.
You couldn't 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, I started doing baking at home, and I had people asking me for to sell it and to get special orders. And eventually I decided I would just open my own place.
Oh my goodness. Did you miss it at first?
I did it first, and I tried a bunch of like recipes with stevia and like, you know, experimented a bit, and I didn't care for any of the recipes. And like after, it took me about a year to get the hang of it and start making stuff that actually tasted good and get some tricks down.
Yeah, I bet. Okay, we'd love to. I want to get more of that, right? Actually make them taste good, make the consistency good. But it sounds like, I mean, what a story, right? You started just for yourself, started baking for other people, and now you have this shop. Do you find that there is more of a demand?
There is quite a bit. Like originally when I opened the store, I was thinking about people that were doing keto or low carb or just for diet reasons. And I didn't really think about the fact that diabetics eat very similar, no sugar, lower in carbohydrates, all that. So I ended up having a huge clientele of diabetics who wanted all the, you know, the cakes and cheesecakes. And I make a ton of drinks that are very similar to Starbucks, but all sugar-free. So it kind of gives people that are diabetic and people that just don't eat sugar a choice rather than just going without.
You have your own pumpkin spice latte?
We do. I just had a pumpkin spice hazelnut latte this morning.
Oh, yum. So what is the trick to making it palatable, delicious, and chewy, and you get that lovely texture? What's your secret?
There are a lot of tricks. I found for the taste-wise, a lot of things that bother people are like there's a cooling sensation when you use things like stevia or erythritol. Monk fruit by itself can have a little bit of a funny aftertaste, but I found if you mix them together, like monk fruit erythritol, which is in these packages here,
Okay, yeah.
in the Lakanto, and like monk fruit stevia, anytime you mix them together, they kind of cancel each other out. So you just get like a straight sugar kind of taste.
Right. And so,
So
yeah, go ahead. How do you deal with that?
yeah, that's just pretty much the trick I found for like making the
Yeah.
aftertaste of all the individual stuff go away is mixing the sweeteners. And it doesn't seem to matter which ones you mix together. If you just mix 2 or 3 together, it cancels each other out and starts to taste like sugar again.
That's what I was going to say. It sounds like one cancels out the other.
Yeah, there's also one I found called allulose, and that's a new one. It's actually not available in Canada yet. The FDA hasn't approved it. It's been in the US for about 10 years now. It's a plant-based, like all natural sweetener.
Huh.
And this one, like it tastes just like sugar. You wouldn't even know. Like you can make caramels with it. It dissolves in water. It's amazing. And we can't really get it here
Yeah.
without ordering it from the US.
And what about the things like, just fruits that give a nice sweet taste to things?
When you're doing like a low sugar or sugar-free diet, you tend to stick to things like berries and, strawberries, blueberries,
Right, yeah.
blackberries, stuff like that. Because, an apple can have about 20 to 30 grams of natural sugars in it.
Okay.
So, same with like oranges, pineapple, any of that stuff. Like I used to love eating pineapple, and if I eat, too much of it, I don't feel great because it does have a ton of natural sugars in it.
And
So we use that in our baking, but it's sparingly, and we use a lot of extracts, so we get more of the flavors.
Yeah. And so what's the reaction like from people then when they try your baking?
Most people, if they don't know it's sugar free, they
Yeah.
don't even realize.
Oh,
Like
wow.
almost everything we make here is also gluten free. We use like almond flour because that's also low in carbs, won't raise your blood sugar. Because most people don't realize it's not just the sugar itself that will spike insulin and blood sugar. It's, stuff like white bread and rice and potatoes, like all of that turns into sugar in your system after you eat it.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from getting some great tips on how to approach baking without sugar and finding replacements and how you balance them out. Love to hear from you as well. What's your favorite sugar-free baking recipe? Are you someone who has been trying to come across or trying to find ways to bake sugar-free or cut sugar from your diet? How is that going? And do you dread the holidays? Give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. If you want to email us your favorite recipe, you can do so, bctoday@cbc.ca. And my guest is Megan Brooke, who is the owner of the Sugar Free Shop in Prince Rupert. I was watching a cooking show yesterday, and they were talking about a dessert. It was like sugar on sugar and sugar, fried and then coated with a glaze of sugar syrup. It was like nonstop sugar. Is it hard for people to change their frame of mind around the need for sugar in baking?
Because for years, all the alternatives were like sucralose and aspartame, which have a really strong aftertaste. Like I couldn't stomach drinking like a Diet Coke or anything like that because the aftertaste is just so like unpleasant to me and most people. So when a lot of people hear sugar free, that's what they associate it with. And there's so many new alternatives now that's kind of a, it's not the same as it used to be.
Yeah, the times have changed in that regard. Do you find even when you're, I don't know, when you travel or things like that, it's easier to just walk into a place and look for sugar-free options?
I notice a lot more places are having like stevia. Like if you go for coffee, they have say even Starbucks, you can get the little monk fruit stevia packets where they keep the sugar. So you have some options now. Like people are starting to get a little more on board and not just have the sweet and low and stuff like that. That's the usual.
Yeah. And do you have a favorite? I was gonna ask you.
I I I honestly, I love the allulose. That's not FDA approved here yet. So I use that sparingly because it's hard to get. But for all my baking at the restaurant, I use monk fruit. And same with,
Yeah.
we're not just baking here, we're an actual restaurant. We just won Best Burger in Prince Rupert, the best of the best contest.
Wow.
And we make all our own sauces from scratch. So our barbecue sauce is sugar-free. We do sugar-free steak sauce, sugar-free sweet Thai chili, teriyaki. All our salad dressings and everything are all sugar-free. Like, and
Wow.
most people don't know because the majority
That's
of our
right.
clientele they're not diabetic or here for the baking or stuff. They're
Yeah.
here to get burgers and sandwiches and stuff, and they don't even realize that sauces they're eating are sugar-free.
Yes. And I don't know if people even realize that the amount of sugar in those things, right? And ketchup and,
Oh
and,
yeah.
and barbecue
Oh,
sauce.
yeah, like we make our own Thousand Island dressing because the one you get on the shelf is just so packed with sugar.
Huh.
Like,
Yeah. See, I'm learning a lot now too. Lisa wrote us an email. I don't use sugar, nor do I use any of the processed natural sugars. I make my own applesauce with no sweetener and an apple and pear butter. Ooh, yum. And I use it in pancakes, muffins, and cakes. Megan is reacting to, I think I heard you say yum there for a second. They
yeah,
are a bit heavier.
applesauce is good.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So if you have applesauce, like for your kids or something like that, they are a bit heavier, but I love them. They taste beautiful. I use a lot of spices, fresh ginger that I grow, raisins and dates, etc. Yes, I've certainly heard of dates and raisins to sweeten things up. I can't stand to eat store-bought sugar items, far too sweet, and I can taste the chemicals. Lisa, thank you very much for that email. It's bctoday@cbc.ca. And Megan, what about for things like icing? Is that possible to go without sugar?
Yeah, they have sugar-free icing sugar. I have one behind on the shelf behind
you
me that
do?
you can't see, but they have sugar-free icing sugar in the Lakanto brand. You can get brown sugar
Yeah, there
substitute
you got
right
a
here.
package of brown sugar
That's
as well.
Yeah, Sucrin Gold. There's Truvia. Oh, right here makes a icing sugar that's made out of I believe it's stevia and erythritol. But I use that all the time when I make cupcakes and cake frostings.
Yeah.
You can buy like Simply Delish brand Jello and pudding is all plant-based and sugar-free. So we use that in one of our desserts, Sex in the Pan. We're always using the Simply Delish chocolate for our chocolate layer in our Sex in the Pan dessert.
I can't imagine what is that dessert?
Oh, it's kind of a Prince Rupert specialty. We've had it here for years. It's layers. Some people have called it like chocolate lasagna, but it's got like a almond flour cookie base,
Okay.
cheesecake, pudding, cream, like the works.
Yes, my colleague George Baker, who is from Prince Rupert, says it is the most decadent thing ever. So
Yeah, it's pretty good. They have it down the street at the cafe with regular sugar at Cow Bay Cafe. And then we have the same version up here, only without sugar.
I think you're planning my next trip to Prince Rupert. Megan, thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Happy baking to you.
Thank you.
Megan Brooke is the owner of the sugar-free shop, yes, in Prince Rupert. It's 12:48, 1:48 in the Mountain Time Zone. You're with BC Today here on CBC. Thanks so much for being with us. Well, this weekend, movie fans can take in the Vancouver International Black Film Festival. The festival highlights the work of Black filmmakers and artists and aims to promote more films on the reality of Black people from around the globe. And it takes place December 1st to 4th in Vancouver. Fabienne Cola is the founder of the festival and joins us now. Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us. I can hear excitement in your voice, and you've got a big smile on your face. How are you feeling?
I am exactly excited and especially talking to you about this amazing, wonderful festival coming this weekend.
How did you come to start this? What led you to do it?
Well, my story started when I landed in Montreal as a landed immigrant about 20 years ago. I was an actress, a well-known actress from my home country, Haiti. And when I came 20 years back, there was no diversity movement, no Black Lives Matter, and not enough inclusion in the film industry and TV industry. So I couldn't land auditions. I couldn't work as an actress, really. Not
Wow.
because we were racist, it's just because the industry were so not yet so inclusive, And that's when I decided to, bring more films from, people of color, from Black people, so that we can have diversity of point of views, of stories. And that's how we started the Montreal International Black Film Festival 20 years back. And fast forward to today, we have 6 Black Film Festivals all over the country,
Yeah.
including the Toronto Black Film Festival, the Halifax Black Film Festival, and we also have now the Vancouver International Black Film Festival. So I couldn't be prouder of the Vancouver community.
You absolutely sound so proud of it. 3rd year running now, right?
3rd year. I could not believe that, because the Vancouver International Black Film Festival was born during the pandemic online. And everybody was like, why? Why are you guys launching a festival in the middle of the
Of all
pandemic?
times, yeah.
Yeah, because it was necessary. So now it's been 2 years, 3 years, but it's been 2 years ever since we're in person as well. So it's a hybrid edition. So everybody can come and meet us and then see the films and be uplifted and inspired by just great stories that you're not necessarily exposed to every day. So that's the spirit of the festival.
40 films, 5 countries. I just want to go back to your own story because it's so fascinating, having been a well-known actor, not being able to get work. I mean, personally, that must have had an impact on you.
Oh, absolutely. I was frustrated. I was sad. I was in my early 20s and I felt like a failure, because I'm like, I'm not even given the opportunity to prove that I'm good or bad, that I can work, I can act or not, because I just could not audition. So, I think we've moved forward in a good way. There's more inclusivity in front of the camera more than ever now, but we're nowhere near where we should be. And Vancouver is really one of the biggest, largest film hub in North America. It's a very diverse city. It's beautiful. Don't tell Montrealers that I say that, because I live in Montreal.
This is live streaming, by the way.
Oh my God. And Vancouver is one of the nicest cities in Canada. This is just beautiful. And you have the best weather. But I still believe there's a long way we can go. We still have a long way to go when it comes to inclusivity of Black people on screen and off screen. And I think this festival is here to complement the offer of other festivals that is offered in the city. And that's why we're here, to really give the audience more diversity.
And thank you very much for sharing your own personal experience and how that affected you. When it comes to storytelling, as you say, we've moved forward some, much more needs to be done. What does that mean we're missing as an audience, in terms of learning about the experiences of Black people in Canada and beyond?
Well, I believe it's important, if we live together, to get to know each other better, one another better. And there's no greater way or more impactful way to get to learn about one another than through cinema, through films. Film is so special because in 2 hours together in a dark room, we get to laugh together, we get to cry together, we get to just and we live a collective experience all together. And then after that, we get out of that film and you want to talk to any stranger that was in that room with you. So this is the feeling I want everybody to get this weekend with the Vancouver International Black Film Festival, through those 40 films. And for people who cannot make it to Vancouver, because people are listening all over this country, you can grab films as well online, because the festival is hybrid.
Yes, so many events have learned that, right? That to be able to broaden your reach in that way too. It's no longer out of necessity, but just the availability of being online. And out of the 40 films, you are opening with a psychological and ethical thriller. And this is Our Father the Devil. It's about an African refugee working in small town France. On our live stream, we are showing some scenes right now, and this centers around the main character who is working as the head chef at a retirement home in France. And there she is walking into what looks like the cafeteria there. Tell us what makes you love this film.
This film is one of the most powerful films I've had the chance to see in a long time. This is a film. One thing I like is the central character is a woman, and she is young, and she carries this story. It's a very powerful and strong story. And then here she is, and she's gonna be meeting this priest coming out of nowhere, but this priest is hiding something, and she's on a quest to uncover this lie about the priest. And this is the whole story. This is fantastic. This is powerful. I invite everyone listening today to grab your tickets to come to the opening film, Our Father the Devil, opening the Vancouver International Black Film Festival this Friday. This is just the film to see. But I have another top picks. Also, it's a series called Being Black in Canada.
Yes.
And we have been doing this program. It's an incubator program where we are fostering up and coming filmmakers, because we want to make sure we don't nurture diversity only in front of the camera, but because we need diversity also behind the camera, because whoever is telling the story has a direct impact on who's being casted, who's being hired, the perspective of the story. So it's important to nurture filmmakers as well. So we help them throughout the country to create their first documentary short films through the program Being Black in Canada from the Fabienne Colas Foundation. So here they are. They will be screening their films, Vancouver or BC premiere, this Saturday. And you have Being Black in Vancouver, Being Black in Toronto, Being Black in Montreal, Being Black in Calgary, Being Black in Ottawa, Being Black in Halifax. They will all be there. And all these filmmakers will come to Vancouver for the first time to really meet the audience. And the audience has a unique opportunity to discover through really inspiring documentaries. What is it today to be Black in Canada from the up and coming, from emerging Black filmmakers? This is just fantastic.
It all sounds amazing. All the best with the opening film and the festival throughout, Fabienne. What a pleasure to speak with you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I mean, we can't wait. I mean, I'm traveling this week to Vancouver. I cannot wait. Thank you.
Great to have you. Fabienne Colas is the founder of the Vancouver International Black Film Festival. It runs December 1st to the 4th at Van City Theatre and the Vancouver International Film Festival Studio Theatre. That's it for our show today. On our live stream right now, you are seeing a time lapse of that fog lifting and the skies clearing over downtown Vancouver. This is how it looked from about 8:30 in the morning. Pretty thick, as you can probably remember, right up until about noon as it started to clear. Really nice sunny views right now. Thanks so much for everyone joining our discussion. I'm Michelle Eliot. Thank you for joining us on BC Today. We'll be back with you tomorrow.